All right, everybody, thank you for coming. 11 a.m., let's get started. I love it. This is an audience that I think I can skip over a lot of my observations I was talking about with Dylan. We'll go over those briefly, but you guys look like normal, well-adjusted members of society, which is awesome and rare, and you don't need to hear a lot of what I'm saying. But hopefully there'll be some good reminders and some good tips. Today, the function of this talk is basically to go over some aspects of what you might want to consider when appearing in front of the camera. Some of these things will just be generally useful for any sort of public appearance, for lectures, but particularly for when you're going to be in a studio, doing a podcast, or even at a protest, getting interviewed, or at some other activist event where there's news cameras there. All right, it's the warm-up exercise time. Who's ready to join me? A little activity? All right, everybody on their feet? I know, it's early, it's terrible, but get the blood going a little bit. So first, we'll take a deep breath. Now, a lot of people, when they take a deep breath, their chest will expand, right? This is something that's very common. But what you want to do actually when you're breathing in is for like actors and for singers, what you're trying to do is expand your diaphragm, which is lower down. It's so essentially you should feel your stomach. I've got a little pooch here, a little belly. This thing should go out even farther than it already sticks out. So a lot of you guys, you look very trim, very fit. So you may not notice it as much, but take a deep breath in. Hold it down there in the diaphragm for as long as you can, at least a few seconds, and slowly release that breath. Let's do it a couple more times. Breathe deep inside. Filling that up. Again, remember your chest shouldn't be coming out. Your gut should be sticking out a little more, and then slowly breathe out. When you laugh, the air goes out faster. But it's good. You're happy. That's a good sign. You'll have a great interview. All right, take another deep breath in, and then slowly release it out. Okay, that's a good first start, getting your lungs warmed up, getting the capacity larger. You'll be able to take in more air when you're talking. Chances are you won't get short of breath when you're up speaking or giving an interview. So it's a great first exercise to do. The second exercise, you're going to incorporate that breathing. What you're going to do, Dylan, can I step in front of here? Will I get feedback if I step to? Great. So what you want to do is exercise that a lot of actors generally call the ragdoll. So what you're going to do is you stand there, you get your feet, 2 feet planted so you don't fall over, and then just drop down at the middle of the waist, breathing in as you go. So drop down and just hang there. You can see how out of shape I am because I can't touch my toes. If you can touch your toes, great. But just let your arms hang, let your arms dangle, let your head dangle. Try not to have that tension in the neck. Just be as relaxed as you possibly can. And then take a deep breath in, fill that diaphragm again, and then slowly exhale as you're going up, vertebrae by vertebrae. Remember, keeping your neck limp, your head hanging down, hanging low, hanging relaxed. Go up all the way, every vertebrae one at a time until eventually you get your neck, just let it ride back up. So if you can do that one more time, just to get the feeling, the sensation of that. Again, take a deep breath, flop over to the waist, let your arms hang down, let your head hang down. That's always the tricky one, letting that neck relax, because we carry so much tension in the shoulders and neck. So just let that relax there. And then take another deep breath in and slowly exhale when you do, and go up vertebrae by vertebrae. And until eventually you get to the neck. Slowly bring the neck up. Just remember, always be careful with the neck. You don't want to hurt that. That's an important spot to take good care of. All right. Here's the part that makes me look like a total jackass up here, so I hope you enjoy it. But I hope you'll do the same, knowing that I'm the only one seeing you, so it's a low-cost jackass activity. First exercise we're going to do is called big face, little face. You're going to try to expand your face as much as you can. Make it as wide as you can, and then shrink it down like you've eaten something sour. Shrink down the eyes, shrink down the mouth. Squish it down as much as you can. So big face. and little face. Do this a couple more times. Big face, little face. And once more, big face, and little face. Okay, well, you should start to feel the muscles relaxing a bit in your face. Next is called mouth off. So we're going to go side to side. Your top jaw is going to go one way, your bottom jaw is going to go the other. You just go back and forth. Again, these are great exercises to do at home or in the car before you get to the studio where you're being interviewed. You might think you've got palsy or something. Unfortunate. Next activity is called the horse. You probably do this. You've done this. Especially kids love to do this. So bust those lips out. Get the whole face shaking there. Warm that up. Give it a try. It's pretty much anybody can do it, I think. I haven't met anybody who can't do it. Maybe Mike Vine can't do it. I don't know. Mike, can you do the horse? Get that face warmed up. That's beautiful. Beautiful work. You probably do that professionally, don't you? All right. So now we got most of the major muscles exercised around the mouth. So this is great. This is going to help with all sorts of articulation, enunciation, clarity when you're speaking. And then we're going to do now a few vocal warm-ups just to get a little bit more work on some of those articulators. So repeat after me. Pa, pe, pi, pe. Pa, pe, pi, pe. And hammer those P's as much as you can. Once more. Pa, pe, pi, pe. Great. That's great. Ma, me, mi, me. Ma, me, mi, me. Excellent. Beautiful. It sounds like a religious cult in here. Ba, be, be, be. Ba, be, be, be. Ba, be, be, be. Beautiful. Putta, kutta, putta, kutta. Putta, kutta, putta, kutta. Anybody have any tongue twisters they want to do, that they want to teach us? No? All right. So you guys probably know, a few. You know you need unique New York. Close, almost. You know you need unique New York. And of course, you keep doing that. Don't worry, you'll mess up almost the whole time, but it's not getting that right, of course. That's the purpose. It's warming things up, getting your mouth going, getting it limber, getting it ready to speak to your audience. Excuse me. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold. So why are we doing these things? What is the point of this class, other than to look at me, ask you to be a jackass with me, communal jackassery? It's because so much of what we do as libertarians is we have wonderful messages, right? We've got an amazing narrative. We've got so much research, so much information. And I'm sorry, I should have said, you guys are welcome to take a seat now. The exercise portion is over. Thank you all for indulging me. Give yourselves a round of applause. You guys were very brave, very willing to engage in that, which is very cool. I went to a talk by Jonathan Haidt recently. Anybody familiar with Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Righteous Mind? Mike, I'm sure you are. It's a wonderful book. It's a very important book for us to read and consider, because he does an analysis of essentially personality types, not just liberals and conservatives, but he also considers libertarians as their own category. And I went to a talk that he was giving, and he was very generous. It was a conference, a libertarian conference, and he actually sat and listened. A lot of speakers will just show up for their talk and that's it. But he actually listened to all the libertarian speakers that day. And so he gave direct advice. He was the keynote on what libertarians could do to improve. And one of those things was, he said, you guys have a wonderful message, but you need improvement on the messenger. And he was talking in a lot of ways about our need for more emotional appeal, appealing to people psychologically. But it certainly goes also for our appearance, our behavior, all of these things that can't be discounted, because these are the aspects by which people will be considering our message, probably more so than any other. I found this study last year. I thought it was pretty interesting. I'm not sure how well you can read it, but it's about how people got their information for their opinions on healthcare reform. And we generally excel at great blog posts, great articles, wonderful research. We have these think tanks with amazing minds in them, creating all sorts of ammunition, intellectual ammunition for us, which is fantastic. But the reach of that can be quite limited. What we saw in this, of course, word of mouth always trumps everything. So being a good representative of your ideas in person to person is important. Next after that is cable TV news appearance. After that, broadcast news appearance. In the 40%, it was newspapers, and then local TV and listening to the radio. So print media is unfortunately a small portion of the way in which people form their ideas, get their opinions, and get their news. And so it's extremely important that libertarians gather more opportunities to appear in front of the camera, to appear on different news sources, that be it podcasts or TV or radio, and that not only that we appear there, but that we're making the best use of that messaging time, that we're leveraging it for all that we can. So what I'm hoping today is we can figure out some better ways in which we can leverage that. Some of these points are going to be very basic. Some of these, like I said, most of you here don't need advice on, but maybe you could pass it forward to some who do need that advice, and hopefully things will be useful. I'd also encourage you, if at any point, I want this to be as useful for you as possible. If you have questions, I know we're asked to do them on the mic so that they can be captured on the video, and so people will know what it is you're wondering. So please, at any point, just step up here. If I'm not looking over there for some reason, I should be. But if I'm not, if I didn't see you, just flag me down or just talk into the mic and just ask a question. Because I want this to be as useful as it can be for you. So this is a basic outline. Is we're going to talk about appearance initially, your behavior on camera specifically, some things germane to TV interviews, to podcasts, and if we have extra time, we'll do some general acting tips that can be useful, not just in the performance sense, that you can utilize those to give a better interview, have a better interaction on camera. So right now, this is not meant to be condescending again. This is a beautiful, well-adjusted audience, it looks like, so some of these essentials are not as applicable, but bathing. This is something I know. If you've been around the movement long enough, you've encountered this, that there are a lot of libertarians who discount basic hygiene. And some of the ways in which we portray our message is not necessarily going to come across camera, but certainly people's reactions to us, such as if we smell or look dirty or unkempt. These are essentials. Brushing your teeth. And this is an area, hey, we all do this. Mike was just checking his teeth line right there, right? I mean, you have breakfast, maybe you're rushing off to the next thing. Caught another guy. We got to make sure if we're coming on camera that we don't have anything in our teeth. You kind of have to be ready at all points in which you're going to be engaging with the public. I know it's something I have to remind myself of, but it's really nice if you're typically working in a studio, you've got people like handling that specifically, prying open your maw to make sure that there's nothing hanging in there. But if you're just dropping in or somebody shows up with a camera at an event that you're doing and wants to ask you a few questions, well, you got to be prepped. So, excuse me. So some of these things are important to just keep in mind in general. Combing your hair, again, you guys look great, but I know it doesn't take long to wander through PorcFest to notice that if camera turns on quite a few of these people, it's not necessarily the best portrayal for the movement, for the ideas, not as useful. I mean, you don't want to end up like this guy who, I guess, sometimes you can make a career out of looking ridiculous, but we've got enough libertarians who look ridiculous. So We'd really, the marginal benefit of one more is very low. The marginal benefit of having some well-adjusted, clean young men and women, all these handsome people here on camera, that's much higher. So keep that in mind. For women, specific advice for women is with makeup, you got to be careful, know when to say when. Again, you guys look great. Some of the folks out here can, on occasion, appear to be Tammy Faye Baker-ish, and this, of course, does not represent the ideas likely in the way we want to. It's hard to be taken as seriously. There's some practical advice, too. You don't want to have to wear lip gloss or shiny makeup because all those things are going to create a glare. The light, either artificial light or light from the sun, will create camera glare, and it'll be very distracting for the television audience. And you don't want anything to pull away essentially from you and your message. So the more you can stay on target, the great. I mean, same thing with things like cat eye makeup. Looks great when you're going to the club, but it's going to be hard for people to take you seriously if you're talking about QE7 or whatever we may be on at this point. Be careful with blue around the eyes. It creates dark circles, especially on camera. Think of the color wheel, so the opposite is red. You're going to want to highlight more around the eyes with red, and this can sometimes go for men as well. If you have dark circles, if that's an issue for you under your eyes, you'll want a little bit of red to lighten that up. It'll look much. Unless your puffiness is red, which you might want to darken a bit at that point. Yeah, you might want to put a little blue or a darker shade on that. Let's see. For men, I know nobody wants to talk about makeup for men, but it's kind of important. And when you're appearing on camera, if you're going into a studio, if you're doing something at CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, they're likely to have makeup for you. Even at your local TV station, they'll probably have somebody to do your makeup, but it's not a bad idea to have a little makeup kit with you and to get, do a little practice with it, be comfortable with it. Just a little bit of foundation. I know it's killing you, but it can make a huge difference. Any sort of blemishes, to cover those up with a bit of foundation. Really cheap, get a tube, get something that matches your skin color so you don't look like some kabuki warrior or something like that. The little makeup sponges, this stuff's all very cheap, all very portable to have in just a little Ziploc bag you can keep in your car or in your office if that's where people are likely to come and interview you. You can get a little translucent powder. They have those at like costume shops in particular, and get a little brush like from CVS and put that up. That's really important. I can't undersell the concept of a little bit of powder to take off shine. We all will get shine because we all sweat. If you're healthy, you will sweat. And so when you're nervous, we tend to sweat more. When you've got bright lights shining down on you, again, you'll sweat more. If you're bald or balding, it's really important that you have that. All of us, for the most part, our forehead and our nose, I've got a bigger nose, and so it tends to, it'll be like Rudolph. It'll start to sweat, and light comes in, boom, shines right off. And you don't want that. Again, it's distracting from your message. So you just take some of that powder, drop it in your hand, take a little brush, and just brush it on your face a little bit. Now, hopefully you'll have the luxury of having this, if you're going to a studio. But if you're doing some sort of protest and you're on site somewhere and you're fortunate enough to get camera coverage and they say, hey, I want to ask you questions in 5 minutes, there's no reason why you shouldn't have this and be prepared. Take that time to get ready so you can look your best for this opportunity. We all know how hard it is to get television time and how valuable that is. So take as much advantage of it as possible. Let's see, men. I know there's a lot of facial hair around here. I hate shaving. I was talking about this with Dylan. Dylan's a good guy about shaving. He doesn't like facial. I hate shaving. I can't stand it. I'll grow like 2 months of beard whenever I can. Unfortunately, facial hair generally means to a lot of people that you are less trustworthy, especially mustaches. People think that you are a creeper, child molester. You know, we get the creepertarian reputation. It's, you know, again, these are general rules, and if that's your thing, I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but just saying that it's something that's counting against you. It's something that's detracting from your message. Again, this is somebody who hates to shave, so I know it sucks. So, you know, Mises, Hayek, Stossel, Ron Swanson, these are all great libertarians who seem to be able to get away with it, but it's kind of like, you know, I don't know if anybody watched that show, Life's Too Short, with Ricky Gervais? There's this bit where Liam Neeson comes in, and Liam Neeson wants to do comedy, and he keeps like bringing up all this tragic material, and they're like, dude, you can't, you know, like AIDS isn't funny. You can't like joke about that unless you're on some sort of troll board on the internet. Then maybe you can, but otherwise you can't joke about this. But you know, he said, well, Ricky does. You know, how does he do it? Like, I don't know. And that's, yeah, I mean, these guys, I don't know. Somehow they get away with it. But for a lot of the rest of us, it gives a certain impression. So, but just be aware of that impression, and then, you know, you can make decisions accordingly. Clothing selection, of course, is hugely important, and not just what you're wearing, but how it looks. You know, how many of you know how to iron? That's great. And you own an iron. These are all like wonderful skills to have. And how many of you like put it into practice semi-regularly? Okay, yeah. And maybe you don't have a need for it, but these would be one of those great moments to put those skills into use. You know, a well-ironed shirt, you know, it's tough. Here, there's not, I didn't find an ironing board at the hotel. I don't know if there's dry cleaning in Lancaster, but you know, when you're at home, when you've got you know, something like, whether it's an interview at the office or wherever, you can have a well-pressed shirt hanging in your office ready to go and ready to go to a meeting. I love to keep, excuse me, I try to keep my clothes. Some of you may not be comfortable with this. I'll keep my suit and my shirt well ironed as long as possible till I get to a studio. I'll have it just sitting, hanging in the back seat, and then just change in the parking lot like I'm some semi-homeless guy. But I want to keep it, you know, as fresh as possible for as long as possible, and that's the goal, right? You know, to show up, sorry, and make your best appearance. Some other clothing suggestions are to be mindful of the colors, right? White serves the same function as those as the shine that we were talking about. White is going to reflect light. So any light that's coming in, whether it be from the sun or from studio lights, your white shirt, your white dress is going to be blown out. It's going to be, or give you some sort of halo effect, which, while it may be really interesting, can also be very distracting. Again, trying to keep it on target, keep it focused on your message. Black serves as an opposite. It sucks all the light in, and so it will tend to make you look darker and also make your message look darker, make it look more negative in a fashion. Pastels are a great choice when you can utilize those. Solids always work best, and again, nothing that contrasts too much, like wearing black and white is a stark contrast, which can be can just show up as being very harsh on camera. Don't wear clothing with small, tight designs. You know, you saw this a lot, especially with older television, like I Love Lucy. Like Ricky Ricardo would be wearing a pinstripe suit, and you're watching him move, and it would get very fuzzy. You'd see kind of this pixelated look. HD has gotten rid of a lot of that, but it's still there to a certain extent. So when you have tight patterns, it will come out looking fuzzy when there's any sort of movement, either from the camera or from your person, which there's bound to be at least on your person. This is especially because you don't want to stand there like a robot. But there's going to be movement, and it's going to be more distracting. So try not to have anything. Again, solids are always a good choice. Don't wear clothing with metal buttons. This is for many reasons. One is, let's say you're at a desk in a studio, and if you start hitting the desk with your metal buttons, it'll make an unfortunate and distracting sound. Also, be careful with metal buttons and anything else that's shiny, because again, light will pick that up. This is jewelry for women, it's the same issue. And also jewelry can be very distracting. You've got big dangly earrings that are hanging around, flying around. Again, just another thing that's detracting from your message. People who wear an excessive amount of, I should say, excessive compared to most people amount of jewelry, many rings, all of these things just serve to distract. So you want to keep it simple. Again, you want to keep it focused on you and your message and making both of those as palatable as possible. Women in particular, we love the short skirts, but again, you got to be careful. You don't want to end up like a scene from Basic Instinct where everybody's trying to look up towards infinity. Just keep something that's attractive, but not something that's going to become distracting. Men, again, the people who don't need to hear it probably are here. People who could benefit are out someplace else. Shine your shoes, and not just the front, but the back. Get the whole thing looking good. These are essentials just for personal appearance as well as on camera. Wearing socks that go above the calf, so if you do cross your legs and your pants come up, you're not revealing huge swaths of leg hair that are not as attractive to an audience as you might feel, though they are manly, I'm sure. You want to keep an audience's lunch down. Have them be not white socks, dark, and if you can, relevant to the rest of your attire, something that matches your suit, matches your outfit. Again, a flat, a well-ironed shirt, a flat collar is best, not one that's buttoned. The buttons can create a collar that bows out and can look strange especially when you're wearing a tie. Men learning how to tie a tie properly is important, not having it too long, not too short. Don't use it as a belt. This isn't Abercrombie and Fitch. I hate that. That's just a personal thing. I know the bow tie is the cool thing, but I still feel that only Sheldon Richman, Murray Rothbard, and Jeff Tucker can truly rock it, because this isn't cool. I don't know. I don't think any of us want to look like Tucker Carlson out there. And speaking of which, this is another thing to be careful of the uniforms, right? So when you're going out, you're wearing a suit or dressing up or something, be mindful of what that conveys. Different audiences are going to appreciate a different form of dress. Different TV shows or public appearances, it's all going to be a different audience. That's important to consider. The khaki pants, the blue blazer, white shirt, red tie, it's great maybe if you're going to a Republican convention and want to fit in, but outside of that, I would avoid that. And for most of us, that's not the audience that we want to appeal to. We want to encompass them, but we also want to encompass people on the other side of the aisle, the traditional aisle. And so, by the same token, dressing like some Occupier or Earth Firster, that can be very limiting as well. So keeping in mind what you want to appear as, and that's something that I see. Some libertarians that you'll meet, they don't agree with the concept of dressing up or feel that it's oppressive, but I think it's important to consider that maybe that is a positive change to get away from that, but that evolution hasn't occurred, and I think we've got a more important enemy in the state than we do in social conventions on attire. So I know I, for one, am not willing to go to the barricades on that one. One thing, a big thing to consider when you're appearing on camera is exactly that, what the format is. So it's very different from a personal interaction. It's very different even from standing up on a stage or giving a lecture at a podium in a public hall. It truly zeroes in on you. think of the camera as a microscope. It can see all of your blemishes. It can see all of your good points, all of your bad points. It's very dangerous. And the amusing thing especially was to see initially the switch from prior videography to HD. And you'd see these, especially older anchor people who looked great before. And then all of a sudden, you see all their crow's feet and every wrinkle across their face. And you can't really mess up the focus too much with that. So just being cognizant and knowing that, that you're in a very tight space there. Another way to think of the camera is as a conversationalist. If you're doing a remote broadcast, let's say you're talking on, excuse me, you're speaking as an expert on something remotely to a TV station in another town, and you're going to a studio locally, or you're doing it as, or from a remote podcast, and you're participating via your camera at home. That it's a conversationalist. It is your conversation partner. You're going to be looking directly into the lens and talking to it. It's going to be looking at you constantly. It's going to hang on your every word. And another way to think of it as a lover. I mean, you have never had such devotion in a human as you will get from the camera. It doesn't blink. It's going to remember everything you say, good or bad. These are all things to keep in mind as you're figuring out how to interact with that camera. Now, the format of television is often very quick, right? I mean, these segments that you're working with are 2.5 to 5 minutes typically. So you want to prioritize your most important messages first. Everything that you feel you need to get across, you need to make that happen one way or another, even if you have to shoehorn it in there, because they're not necessarily going to let you talk about the things that you want to talk about. So you need to constantly be evaluating that and reframing the discussion, and also not falling into the trap of answering questions that you don't want to answer, or answering questions that maybe you shouldn't answer. We want to tell the truth, but sometimes the whole truth is not always the best thing for us, because people are not always as prepared to listen to it. I mean, I'm not exactly sure of the conditions of the Free State Project, but most of the time, if somebody from FSP is giving an interview, they probably don't want to talk right off the bat about anarchism. That could get people in TV land a little bit nervous. And you may want to approach that with a softer position to go forward. But also be prepared to talk on more than just a couple of your points. You want to have those 2 or 3 points, and 3 would be amazing if you could get that many in. But you want to have more prepared in case the segment runs longer for some reason. You never know, especially with live TV. You're just never quite sure where things will lead. Sometimes sessions can run very long. Like we did before, do your vocal warm-ups ahead of time so you're ready to deliver. You don't want to have any of those technical problems in the way of your messaging. One of the things that afflicts a lot of people, and I do, you can often encounter this in the talks here, is people at the beginning of their talks will speak very quickly. It's very common. You'll have that nervous energy, and it will cause you to speed up your message. And the way television works, a lot of the interviewers will be speaking quickly. It's all about getting the news out fast, getting as much crammed into this segment as possible, getting as many segments into one show as possible. Don't let them set the tempo for you. Always be willing to take your time, to slow things down, especially on points that need emphasis. You really want to hammer those home. And one of the best ways to do that is to slow it down, particularly at those moments. And don't be afraid to repeat that, as well as Just make sure that messaging is done with clarity and enunciation. TV is going to flatten you out, physically, vocally, so you're going to work on being as dynamic as you can, trying to go in with as much energy, even if you have to artificially push it a bit, because your voice is going to sound more monotone, and everything about you will seem more still. You don't want to be moving around too much. It's a very tough balance to have a lot of internal energy, but not a lot of physical energy. Because again, keeping in mind that frame is so tight, it's so small, and any movement you do is amplified by a tremendous number of times. And you want to be able to convey that energy without actually engaging in a tremendous amount of movement. But some movement is important because you don't want to seem stiff. So you want to gesture, but you don't want to gesture above your chin. It's very distracting when you see a hand pop into a frame. If it's not just your head, it's going to be probably about from the bottom of your chest up to the top of your head, or you could have a wider thing. But you don't want to stick your arms out farther. You want to try and keep your gesturing inside, keep it about mid-chest level. Excuse me. Gesturing is an important area, but you have to be very careful with it. You want to keep your gestures somewhat circular in motion. You don't want to be chopping. We all know how obnoxious this looks when politicians go like this, especially when you're looking directly into a camera. Or pointing. I hate being pointed. I fucking hate being pointed at. And you'll get people like Romney or something like that, or so many politicians, but they'll do all these kinds of things and these very didactic, very condescending ways of message delivery. And typically, people don't respond well to that. They feel like they're being scolded, they feel like they're in trouble, and it's not a good way by which to transmit your message. We talked about breathing deep, that deep breath down into the diaphragm, and you want to keep doing that as much as you can. You don't want to start resulting into shallow breath. You may be nervous or be angry, and it's going to be hard to avoid. But as much as you can try, and some of that is just practice, actually practicing breathing, so it becomes a regular part of your activity to take those deep breaths, exactly, in through that nose, down into the diaphragm, filling that up, and slowly releasing. Avoiding upward inflections is really important, especially for women. Upward inflections is something that a lot of us have to deal with. But ending the sentences ending the sentences in an upward inflection. It's Americans in general and women more specifically that have to deal with this. There's a speaker from last year who every time I hear him give a talk, I crack up because he motors through and he's pretty good, but he'll talk like this, and everything falls off at the end. And part of the problem is that you don't always get the message because sometimes you can't even hear it. It sounds weak, and you'll just miss the end part of these sentences, which sometimes that's the most important part to grasp. So avoid the upward inflections at the ends of the sentences. It's often, again, another part of kind of nervous habit, and when you're uncomfortable and you feel vulnerable, that people end up with these kind of hang-ups, but it's just something to think about. Verbally, I don't want to talk too much about messaging because it's not really what my talk's about, not really my strong suit to speak on. But one of the things to keep in mind is that the majority of people comprehend at a 7th grade grammar level. So you can use all these wonderful terms, all this brilliant vocabulary, gorgeous sentence structure, but it's going to be lost on a lot of people. That message will not be received. They'll be impressed. They'll think, damn, this guy is really freaking smart. But, I mean, if that's your goal, that's great. But it's kind of a narrow goal. And it's a pretty indulgent goal. And that's fine if that's what you want to achieve. But if your goal truly is to get these ideas out there, you have to consider that, you know, you can talk about Austrian business cycle theory and quantitative easing and all of this stuff, or you can say, hey, you know, we got a problem with the money supply, and you know, there's too much money being created, and it's causing prices to go down. You can church it up all you want with hyperinflation but you know, it's for your general television audience. This is not going to serve your cause in the long run. Posture. If you're sitting, you want to sit as actively as you can, which sounds like a contradiction, right? But you want to lean forward and at least appear to be engaged. Hopefully you will be engaged with the person you're discussing with, but at the very least appear to be engaged. Don't lean back, don't slouch, don't get comfortable. You're not there to be comfortable. You're not settling in for a nice little after evening chat. This is your time to shine. You want to be as active and engaged as possible because all of that's going to read to the audience. If you can avoid it, excuse me, don't sit behind a desk. It seems like you're hiding something. You know, just like if I was giving some sort of sales pitch, standing behind the podium would not be the best place to do it. You want to be out in front of everybody. You want to be as vulnerable as you can because you're selling something, right? So you want people to believe in you, believe in what you're saying, and you want to show them, I've got nothing to hide. And a lot of that's, you know, that's something in particular that libertarians run into, in that I know some people they're suspicious. They think, you know, what is this, especially out here, what is this, some takeover, some hostile takeover, some plan to ram down the throats of the people, this policies that they might not like, or, you know, or some sort of white separatist movement, or whatever, you know, all this stuff gets painted as occasionally. And it's unfortunate, but we want to be as, this sounds, when I put it this way, we want to appear to be honest. Well, because we are honest, but we need to appear to be honest. It's not enough to just be honest. And that's the whole point of all this, right? Is it's not just about our message, but it's how we're conveying this messaging. You don't want to keep your hands in your pockets. In fact, whenever I do anything on camera, or for that matter, any speaking at all, I empty my pockets. You gotta have room for the mic pack sometimes, if that's what you got in there. But otherwise, everything creates a distraction, right? You've got keys, you've got change. These things are making noise or creating unsightly lumps in your pants. A phone that can go off. Of course, you want to turn that off, or at least silence it so it doesn't create a disruption or a problem. If you are going to be sitting, try as hard as you can not to have a swivel chair. If it's under your control, it's at your office, you don't want to do the swivel chair because you will invariably swivel and it will be very distracting. Yeah, you know, I mean, it could be amusing, you know, spinning around in circles, but again, probably distracting from your message. Don't use props. Props, unless you're selling a book, that's about the only prop that you should ever use when appearing on camera. You shouldn't have notes. Remember, you're talking for 2.5, 5 minutes on your idea, and you've got, you don't need notes for that. You should be prepared. You're only going to have 2 or 3 message points and maybe a couple of little bulletins under each of those, and you know, it'll be the assumption that you're an expert on the topic and that's why you're there. So you won't need the notes for that. You won't need to stay on target. your target's very limited. Right? You will need to stay on target. Your target's very limited. You won't need notes to help you do that. Anything else is a distraction. And I don't think you can get away with things like smoking on camera anymore unless you're a resurrected Ayn Rand. I just wanted to throw the zombie Ayn Rand in there. If your interview is not used, it's probably not a conspiracy against you. It's probably just that it's any number of reasons, right? Something else has trumped it that day, or you didn't give something of value, and that's okay. Hopefully, if you've been a good, cool person to work with, to deal with, they will invite you back at some other point. And that's the whole goal of this, is to appear on camera, and it's not to be offered to host the show or to have your own show after that. I mean, it'd be pretty amazing if that happened, but it's not likely. What your goal at that point is just to be invited back. Make an interesting interview, make a good appearance, and ask that you can come back. And one of the important things, of course, to do in preparation for all this stuff is to practice. Practice all your talking points. Get a friend to ask you sample questions of what you're likely to hear, what you're likely to be dealing with. And do your research. You know, you've researched your topic. You know what it is you're talking about for that. Do your research on the show. What's the format? You don't want to end up like Bob Barr on Borat. Anybody remember that? When Borat was interviewing Bob Barr? Or when Ron Paul was being interviewed by Bruno on that film? I mean, you know, in this day and age, there's very little excuse to wind up surprised by the format and the tone and the attitude of the show. All these, you can go on YouTube and see just about any show or the cable TV's own archives and watch how the host deals with their guests, see what they're likely to ask, what they feel is important. And so you can be very ready for whatever comes your way. I got a lot more to talk about, but I don't have a lot more time. So if anybody'd like to ask questions at this point, I would love to take those. I know they'd like to step up here and do that. And anything that you think might be helpful, or also feedback from the audience and advice on what they might suggest. Yeah?
Do you have advice for doing away with speech fillers, like, etc.?
I wish I had some magic cure-all solution, because I know you heard me with tons of ums and uhs, and it's something I deal with, and I actually don't like public speaking at all, and that's part of it. So, right there. And now you'll hear even more for the rest of this talk. So it's really just a function of practice. The more you can practice what you're going to be talking about, the more helpful that will be in eliminating that, but also just practicing being in front of people and giving the talks. Unfortunately, the mindfulness of it is huge, being aware of it. Excuse me. Some people aren't capable of hearing themselves. And a great way of practicing it is to put yourself on camera and then, even just counting the tick marks of how many times you do it. It's one way of dealing with it, but it's one of those where you just have to keep working at it. I wish there was something better, because I would take that pill in a heartbeat. Yeah, Mike.
Okay, well, as someone who does this kind of thing from time to time, I appreciated the refresher. I had one thing to add and a question. The addition would be, it's good to have a few facts and figures memorized. When you're talking about a point, people are more persuaded if you make your broad point and then throw them a really compelling fact. When I do a TV hit, I'll usually prepare for at least 2 or 3 hours gathering research on what I'm going to say and boiling it down. So it is a pretty time-intensive thing. My question was, I had a challenge coming off a little harsh. I kept myself still, but I was in a debate, and I think I kind of looked angry. So do you have any thoughts about how friendly to be when you're in that kind of situation, if you're on a one-on-one kind of debate kind of hit?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's so easy, and for some of us, this is really important stuff. The stakes are not, where should we go for dinner? It's there's actual people's lives and well-being at stake, and so sometimes it's hard to be congenial with an opposition that we may feel directly responsible for horrors in the world. One of the tricks that actors use, particularly, excuse me, voice actors will use, is to smile when they talk. Now, it's easier when you're not being seen to do that, because sometimes you can look creepy, you can look jokerish with that smile. But the more you can smile as you're talking, the more it changes the tone of your voice. It changes the way it sounds. And so I would definitely try to engage in that. Another thing might be to try to change some of the messaging. I know, again, we love facts and figures, right? We love all these hard-hitting points because, of course, everybody should think like we do and get it, There's all this utility to be gained by doing things our way. But it's tough to empathically relate to that. And so if you can weave in some sort of narrative story, some sort of a tale about that actually talks about an individual. Like the Institute for Justice campaigns, they'll bring forth, a woman who just wants bone marrow for her kids, and she'll give a speech about, like crying because her children are dying because there are laws that are preventing them from getting this, from acquiring a sufficient amount, and how powerful that is. So if you can tailor some of that into your messaging, it's that much more effective. And I know, for all of us, these things, we recognize that there's real people and there's real harm being done. And it's going to affect other people, and it's going to affect us as well. So if you can tap into any of those stories, is this helpful at all, or is this along the lines? Do you have a follow-up or anything else you want to ask, or is that, am I evading it?
I tend to do financial stuff mostly, so the facts and figures probably play in a little bit more.
Okay.
But maybe taking a more positive message would make me appear more positive.
Well, yeah, but also, so if you're talking about facts and figures, then another thing would be, so actors have they do this thing called substitution, right? Because you're playing, across from somebody who is, you're supposed to be my lover, but, I don't even like you that much, right? So it's going to be hard to create a genuine interaction there. If you can substitute, somehow imagine that the person you're talking to is your friend or your wife or what have you, somebody that you care about, that you like, and substitute out that creep that you're talking to. You might be able to, on the margins, gain a little bit more of an emotional resonance with them, and hopefully, that will help to lighten your mood. And that's something, again, to practice, but you may want to have some kind of stock individuals, like, imagine you're talking to your wife or to your parents or to a sibling or something like that, so that you can have a more comfortable interaction with them.
Great, thank you.
You got it. Anybody else? Anything else? Thank you very much for coming. You guys have a great one. Thank you. And thank Dylan and his family for all the hard work they've done with the audio, video, and everything else through the entire PorcFest. They've been fantastic.